Hey guys, I'm just about done with the Motorola 12K2 chassis. Got all the painting done, just waiting for the last bits to dry. Here's the transformer. Came out quite nice, I think. And I was really impressed by this copper paint. I think it looks fantastic. So here's the cover that goes over the tuning area. Fortunately, it's missing on this chassis for the Bakelite Motorola, so I'll have to fabricate something from some sheet metal, but at least I know what it's supposed to look like. And here's the bit that holds on the focus magnet, and here's the strap that holds on the CRT that goes on the front like that. And I did paint this side black. I think it came out alright. So not too much left on this. Let's see, the focus magnet's kicking around here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. I got this painted up as well. So I think this will look pretty sweet. That'll mount back onto this copper bracket like so. So I just need to wait for this last coat of black paint of the transformer to set up, and I can start putting this stuff back together. In the meantime, I've got the cabinet to work on. I finished stripping the entire cabinet and it's just about ready for stain. But before I do that, I want to reapply the trim. I do have some missing sections, so I have to fabricate some. I dug up some mahogany veneer that is a good color match and grain match for the original stuff. But it wasn't the right thickness, so I had to take 2 sheets and glue them up. I slathered on a lot of glue and then clamped it between the 2 sheets of metal. It's nice and flat, and it's exactly the right thickness. These are perfectly flush when I put them side by side. So what I'm going to do is cut out a strip that's exactly the right width, and then I guess take a pencil and mark out the sections that need to be cut out, and very carefully take a sharp utility knife and a metal straight edge and cut those little sections out. I have one entire side that's missing, and then I need a few bits for the other areas. Hopefully it won't take too long. I strip sanded and cleaned out the area where the trim goes on as best I could. I also stripped and sanded down the old trim, and now I'm going to reapply it. This is one case where the bug holes are kind of handy because there's one here and I can see where it went into the cabinet, so I know exactly where this piece goes, right like that. Now I got a few choices for glue. I got Titebond 1, Titebond 2, but I'm going to go with this liquid hide glue. You got a bit of set time so you can position stuff well, and holds on really well. So this is, I believe, kind of like the old horse glue. It certainly stinks, but that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to apply some carefully to the back of this, and then mush it in good to make sure that both surfaces get glue on them, and then put a little weight on it, and hopefully it'll stay down. So on this side, I've got this section and this piece. That. So all I'm missing is one little section here. Now I've been trying to cut out some from this new mahogany, and it's turning out to be a bit more work than I had originally figured. So we'll see, but certainly just to cut out a little piece about that big is no big deal. And then I've got the whole front, so there's really just one side I need to make. The problem I've been having is cutting this stuff out is just not at all easy, especially since I glued 2 pieces of veneer together. That dried glued seam makes this kind of tough to cut through. And also tends to break out, so as I cut down and pull near the edges, it splinters out. If I had a really fine saw, like a really fine coping saw, especially like an electric one, that'd probably make this a bit easier to do. Something else I'm contemplating though is So I'm trying to cut out all these zigzags. You simply cut some long strips that are the right width, and then cut a bunch of little short pieces. And instead of making one piece like this, lay it down with a whole bunch of individual pieces like this, and then fill in a little piece here and there. It should be a lot faster. The only downside of that is there'll be joints here and there, but if I glue it up really tight, and then of course I'll be applying the finish and so on, which will fill in any voids, it might not look that bad. We'll see. Here's my plan B for the molding. I did give up trying to cut it out in one continuous piece. Instead, I took a strip that was the full height and I cut it to 3 pieces for the top and the bottom and the middle. And then I took a straight edge and a sharp knife and I scored it a couple times, every 1/4 inch, which is the thickness of the original stuff, both the vertical and horizontal pieces. And once you score it a couple times, you can put it over the edge like this and you can snap it off pretty easily. Which gave me a bunch of vertical pieces, and for the horizontal I did it similarly and scored it off at about 3/4 of an inch and snapped them off, which gives me these individual pieces, and then you can glue them back together and you can form that same type of pattern. Now, this may seem a little bit crazy and tedious, but keep in mind I don't have to do the whole set. I still have most of the original stuff. This is just to patch up 2 of the sides and to fill in the 3rd side. And of course when you glue these down you can push them up pretty tight together and those seams close right up. And there are still marks from the original stuff on the base wood, so I can see where these actually line up pretty easily. As you can see, it actually goes pretty quick, so it won't be too much longer. I can finally be done with this and start to stain the thing. Two sides down, 1 to go. Any differences in color and grain should pretty well disappear once I put on this stain and the layers of finish. Okay, I finally have all 3 sides of the trim done. Now I'm going to apply the stain. I'm going to do the top first. I've got it all sanded down and I got rid of every bit of dust using a microfiber cloth. You could also use a tack cloth. I think this is a little bit more convenient. Tack cloth is like cheesecloth impregnated with some almost like rubber cement sticky substance, but that can leave residue on the wood. These microfiber cloths do a really good job of picking up dust and getting it out of all the pores of the wood and so on. And you can wash them and reuse them. Alright, so I'm going to use this gel stain. I like this because this is mahogany versus red mahogany. Red mahogany would be far too red. This originally had a brown mahogany finish, and I can't find any of that at my local home improvement center, but they do have just straight up mahogany, which is pretty close to the brown mahogany. I did some tests with it earlier. So you're supposed to mix it up really good, then apply it with a brush or a cloth, and then allow it to penetrate for 5 to 15 minutes, and then wipe off the excess. If it's too light, you can do another application after 8 to 10 hours of dry time. So I'm going to pop this open, stir it up, and put it on. Here's what it looks like. It's thicker, goopier than regular stain. That's what I like about it. It doesn't drip and splatter all over like a regular stain can, which is quite thin. I picked up literally a bag of rags and I cut off a chunk of it. I'm going to try putting on the stain with it. If this doesn't work so well, I can always resort to using a brush. Idea is you put it on pretty thick and then you wipe off the excess. Go with the grain and work it in there really good. And as you can see, this is actually a fairly brown color, which is what I want. is compared to really red mahogany. I guess when I get around to doing this Admiral, I can use the same stuff because it's also a rather brown mahogany. I think that's looking pretty good so far. This is one case where it's fine to be messy, put on way too much. The idea is you want to put on too much. You want to make sure that you get a lot of stain on here so it penetrates good and you get a nice even color. Just wipe off the excess later on. After about 5 minutes I wiped off the excess. I'll let this dry overnight and decide tomorrow whether or not I think it needs a second coat, but so far I think it looks really good. After the stain on the top dried, I moved on to the sides and the trim in the front. The veneer all looks fine, but the solid wood areas are lighter, and that's what I expected to happen. Stain doesn't penetrate the solid hardwood as well as it does the veneer, which is why I picked up this can of brown mahogany toner. What I'll do is I'll mask off the veneer areas and give a coat to any of the lighter areas on the hardwood, and then I'll give a light coat to the whole thing to blend it all together. Right now I've got it flipped upside down so I can focus on the underside. When they originally refinished this, they just slopped a bit of finish here and there underneath, but they really didn't do these feet very well. So some sides are a bit dark, some are still raw wood. So I'm going to go over and do all this because these edges of the feet are somewhat visible when the set's right side up. I also took some time and used wood filler to fill in the edges here, which had been nicked and dinged from over the years of use and abuse. Here's a little test spray I did of the brown mahogany toner. So as you can see, it's a pretty good match for the existing color. Now I want to mask off the veneer areas, as I said before. So what I like to do to minimize the amount of tape I got to use is to take a piece of newspaper and use some blue painter's tape and just leave a little bit exposed, and then I tape that up to the cabinet and let the paper cover the bulk of the area. This also minimizes the amount of tape residue you may have to clean off after spraying, because the solvent from the toner lacquer can react with the sticky substance on the tape and kind of leave a residue on the leave a residue behind that you can clean off with mineral spirits. The cabinet's all masked off and I'm about ready to start spraying it. This stuff is pretty light, and I'm going to put it on like you would an airbrush, just light gentle strokes to blend in. For example, this area is pretty dark, it's pretty good, but up here it's a bit lighter. So I'm going to do a couple passes here, I want to do some passes here, and so on, and a couple along the bottom, just to blend this all together, give it a nice even color. Here it is after the toner lacquer. I gave it about 3 light coats overall, and then focused more heavily on the areas that were still a bit too light, like in here, and I think it looks a lot better now. So the next step is to fill in the grain. You could clear coat it at this point and call it done, but really this surface is fairly rough. This is a very open grained wood. I think you can see all that here. It should be nice and smooth like this old RCA cabinet here. Looks like glass. So the product I'm going to use for that is over here. Constantine's paste wood filler. In an earlier video, I think when I did this GE810, I showed using some Balin water-based filler, which works all right, but I didn't like the way the color turned out too well, and I had to do a lot of sanding. I've heard this stuff works better. This is more traditional, because unlike that, which is water-based, this is solvent-based. If you look on the ingredients here, you'll see that it's got toluene and xylene and so on. Crystalline quartz is the actual filler component, though, I believe, and maybe the magnesium silicate hydrate as well. So this is basically, it's like a fine grit suspended in some solvents, and you rub it in using burlap. And I have explicit instructions here about how you should rub it in. So apparently you're supposed to mix this with gum turpentine, mineral spirits, or naphtha. We'll have mineral spirits on hand, so that's fine. So even with the solvents in here, I guess you still need to thin it down even more. You're supposed to mix it to a consistency of heavy cream, apply a thick coat with an inexpensive cloth or a brush, and then push filler into pores with a plastic spreader or by rubbing, and so on. And then the idea is just like when you grout tile, you want to keep working with it as it dries to keep the surface clean. You don't want to just spread this on, let it dry, because then you have to do a ton of sanding to get all the crud off. So the idea is spread it on thin. As it starts to dry, you rub with this burlap to get the excess off. You want to leave the filler in the pores, but not on the surface. So ideally, when you're done, you just have a very light film, if any at all, and then they say to do light sanding with 320 grit paper after it's dried for 24 hours. And if need be, fill it a second time. Much better to have to do a second pass with the filler than to have a thick film on top that you have to sand down. I have not used a specific product before, so I think it'd be a good idea for me to do some experimenting. I've got some leftover veneer that I used to make that trim, so I'll cut out a section of this and give it a try.